Hello there, my name is McHorse, and welcome to Blockbuster 1.6 changelog video. I bet this update will blow your mind, because of how many awesome features were added during these past 5 months. Before we'll jump into review of new features, I would like to say 2 things. First of all, it's Blockbuster's 3rd birthday. It's incredible how drastically Blockbuster changed in these 3 years. I would like to give a shout out to Kiso, who allowed me to use mockup's code for the first version of Blockbuster. Thank you Kiso. And second, I want to thank members of my Discord server for testing, reporting and suggesting new features. Thank you very much, guys. Without you, half of the features showcased in this video wouldn't be there, and maybe this release would have many bugs. Anyways, let's start with most exciting features. The first epic feature was suggested by STH and Andrewxioid. It's called BB Gun. In a couple of words, it's a glorified version of Model Block which can shoot projectiles. It can be used for lots of things in Machinimus: firearms, shotguns, flamethrowers, catapults, avalanches, particles, and etc. You can find BB Gun in Blockbuster's Creative tab. It's invisible by default. You can also find it by searching for BB Gun in the search field. Once you pick it, you can start shooting projectiles right away by right-clicking when holding the gun. However, it doesn't have a lot of use in its default state, so that's why we should configure it. In order to configure a BB gun, you need to go to Control Options and set a keybind for Configure Gun key. Once you set it, hold a BB gun in your main slot and press the keybind, and a menu will appear. In Gun Configuration menu, there are numerous options. Let's take a look at them in order. The first panel represents firing options. Default Morph button allows you to specify a morph that will be used as an item in your hand or inventory. Meanwhile, Firing Morph allows you to specify a morph that will be displayed after you fire the gun. For a brief moment, the delay field is responsible for how many ticks the firing morph would display. If it's 0, then firing morph will never be shown. Next goes Scatter and Projectiles. Projectiles options specify how many projectiles will be launched when you fire. However, if you specify more than one, you most likely want to change Scatter option as well, which allows to randomize the initial angle, which allows creating shotguns. Finally, there is a command field that allow execute a command when you fire a gun. All the commands options of BB Gun don't use the player, but rather projectile to execute commands, so keep that in mind. Next panel represents projectiles options. First and foremost important, here you can specify the morph for the projectile. Then there are speed, friction and gravity options, which allow you to configure projectile's arc. Speed determines how fast projectile moves blocks per tick. Friction determines how quickly projectile loses its velocity, and gravity determines vertical fall measured in blocks per tick. Hitbox fields should be explanatory. X affects the width of the hitbox, and Y the height. Ticking option determines how frequently command on tick will get executed. 0 means never, and lifespan option determines how many ticks until projectile will disappear. Yaw and pitch checkboxes allow you enable horizontal and vertical rotations of the projectile. Disabling both can be useful to use with a new image morph option, which is shown later in this video. Sequencer and random checkboxes is where fun begins. If sequencer checkbox is enabled, and you picked a sequencer morph for projectile, BB Gun will use this morph as a container, and will pick one of the morphs from sequencer morphs list. It will do it in order, if you have multiple projectiles selected, so each time you'll have same morphs variation used for every shot. Meanwhile random will randomize the morph picking from sequencer. Next goes Impact panel, where you can configure different properties that relate to projectile's impact with something. First goes the damage option, which determines how much health will gun projectile will inflict upon impact with an entity. Hits property determines how many times does projectile has to hit something. It's not really useful by itself, so keep watching. Impact delay is very similar to delay in firing options. It's basically controls for how many ticks the impact morph will be shown for. Vanish option determines whether projectile disappears after it hits the number of hits option. Bounce makes the projectile bounce off the surface of blocks. It also take into account the hits option. After number of hits it will stop bouncing. And finally we have here command on impact, which executes a command upon impact. And the last panel is dedicated to transformations of morphs both in gun and projectiles. It's very similar to what we have in body part and pose editor sections. With these fields you can change position, scale and rotation of gun and projectile morphs. Finally, we're done here. That's a lot of configuration options, and I feel like you could come up with more use cases for BB guns than I proposed in the beginning of this section. The next 3 features, which I'm going to showcase, are new special kind of morphs. First of them is sequencer morph. It allows to animate given morphs with custom delays in between. It's quite easy to use. Edit the morph and add as much morphs as you want, and it will automatically slideshow these morphs in order. There are also duration and random fields. Duration is for how many ticks will the morph be shown for, and random allows to specify a number that will randomly be generated between 0 and the number you specified, and added to duration. Use random to add variety, for example extra delay for blinking eyes. The next morph is record morph. It was suggested by Herr Bergman, and it allows to encapsulate player recordings within a morph. Those morphs can't interact with the world, however, some of the actions are still played. Record morphs can be used in variety of ways, such as background actors, walking on the wall characters, or actors within body parts. The editing GUI of a record morph is simple as well. You have a list of currently available player recordings, and also a button to pick initial morph. This morph can be used with model block, body part or even BB guns. And the last special morph for this update is structure morph. This morph was suggested by Elrid Stoniano, and it allows to render structures, saved with structure block, as morphs. With this morph you could do a lot of cool stuff. There are no edit morph menu, you simply select the structure in the morph menu and that's it. However, the main challenge for most people would be saving their structures. Take a look into pinned comment or description for a tutorial on how to save structures with structure blocks. Anyways, once you have a structure saved, you can use it anywhere in the morph system. With it, you can make body parts accessory, projectiles or gun models for BB gun. However, there are a couple of limitations. Structure block puts limits on width, height and depth to 32 blocks, and you can't have very heavy, file size wise, structures, as Forge limits packet size to 32 kilobytes. If the game kicks you out, it's most likely because the structure is too big. Next we have less epic but very useful Blockbuster features. Since 1.6, now, all new director blocks will hide themselves on playback, and all the director blocks that have that option enabled will hide themselves too. This feature was suggested by Group M. And beside director blocks hiding themselves, you can also walk through them when they are hidden. This was suggested by Jub. Hopefully, this feature will allow you to concentrate more on player recording rather than on hiding director blocks. Also, another useful feature for director blocks, suggested by ChatPKSK, is rendering of them in F3 screen, similar to model blocks are rendered. This should let you find lost director blocks much easier. I covered this feature in OBJ import video, however, let's get over this again. In this update, I added a new checkbox to model editor, which allows making the full triangular ugly shading look smooth. Simply select the limbs that have ugly shading, click on smooth checkbox, and save the model. If you're using shaders, then ignore this feature, but it looks very nice without shaders. Beside adding new special morphs, I also added a couple of new properties to existing Blockbuster morphs, image morph and custom model morph. Image morph now has two new properties, lighting and look at player. Lighting checkbox allows to disable lighting, which makes it glow during the night. It looks especially good with shaders that support bloom. Second option is called look at player, which allows to orient an image morph toward player. It's probably best to use with BB guns and disabled pitch and yaw. custom model morph got 2 scale fields, which allow you much easier to change scale of the model in the game, and scale of the model within morph pickers. Now you can add scale variety to your characters much easier. Besides changing the visual scale, custom model scale also changes the hitbox's scale. The next useful feature will probably blow your mind. In this update, I updated the texture picker, and now it supports navigation within Blockbuster's models folder. That means now you can easily categorize your skins into separate folders and select skins from this menu. However, that's not even the coolest part. Here is a button called multi-skin, which allows you to stack skins on top of each other. That creates a lot of room for modular skins. Of course, you'll need to do some preparation work in order for this to work, but it's really worth it if you have a dozen of characters who can wear same outfits. Especially it comes in handy when you also have face expressions. I believe you'll find more ways to use this feature. And the final feature of the update is support of animated gifs. That's right everyone. Now you can load memes and reaction gifs into Minecraft, and beside that, you can also use that feature with custom models and image morphs. The only limitation is that you can't use URL skin feature with this, and must manually download gifs in order to see them animated. Credit goes to Mr. Crayfish and Diane B. I looked up how Mr. Crayfish implemented it in his furniture mod, and took the gist of it, but implemented completely different, and I used Diane B's GIF decoder to read animated GIF files. Well, that's it for this update. There were of course other changes, and lots of bug fixes, but you can see that for yourself in the text change log, that I will link in the description. Hopefully, this update should give you lots of new tools to play around with in your machinimus. I hope to see new awesome machinimus being made with it. Don't be lazy,
or I'll cut your access to Blockbuster mod.
Just kidding. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.